Hello everyone, and welcome to Fringe's Space, where we will delve into the unknown and the unseen. Pour yourself a glass and open your mind to the fact that reality is but a tear away from disbelief.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Shane. I'm waiting for Bridget. She's usually it doesn't take very long to jump in.
Gonna have to fire Bridget. Bridget, you're fired.
Yeah, where is she at? Sometimes she
Bridget.
has problems with her phone, but she should be along shortly.
So what's the topic tonight, friends? What are we delving into? Because I'm so ready. I've been waiting on this all day.
What do you want to talk about?
Dude, I don't even know, dude. I've been on like a really big ghost kick here lately, though. Been on a super big ghost kick. Like I spent all day Sunday, friends, and Tiffany knows this because I send her every video I watched almost. But I literally have been on, like, I watched the first season of Ghost Hunter, Ghost Adventures. I watched, like, I even downloaded TikTok because TikTok has all the weird paranormal videos. Watched that, and I found some pretty crazy shit that I believe is real. There's Bridget. But yeah, I don't know. Like, the ghost phenomenon, I feel like doesn't get a lot of, like, traction, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't. It's so closely related to. I'm actually surprised it doesn't get more attention.
I always joke about, like, I shouldn't even be UFO Shane. I should literally be paranormal Shane because the thing that I saw was literally a ghost event. It wasn't even like I saw a UFO like a year and a half later. But to be honest with you, I mean, it was a pretty wild thing that I saw that thing in broad daylight. But, the thing I saw on was the day I buried my mom. And, I watched that cabinet, man. It unlocked itself with a key that wasn't even meant for the lock. The door swung open like kunk, 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 the glass door. And then I watched a toy RC helicopter I'd had for 13 plus years that my dad gave me before he died when I was 13, levitate all the way across the room, sit down in front of the couch, like 10 fucking feet, it maybe more. And if that wasn't wild enough, and then 6 red balls of gelatinous light just manifested in front of my fucking face and spun in a circle. And it was on the day I buried my mom. And then earlier that day, my best friend at the time was like walking back from my house, and he was supposed to be setting the house up for the after burial, like, meet and greet thing. And he was like, there's red balls of light flying through your house. And, it was like a whole thing. And I can't not believe in it. I literally saw it. I fucking saw it.
Yeah, and it's going to turn out all this stuff is related. The paranormal, the UFO stuff, and all of that. Bridget,
I did.
here you are. You want to play our little tune, which apparently you can get a copyright violation for, and we'll get started.
You can't get copyright violations on Spaces. Don't worry about it.
That's good to know. I guess somebody posted on YouTube. All right, we'll get started. Here we go.
All right. Thanks for joining us tonight on Into the Fringe.
Well, Bridget, how was your week this week?
Oh, busy. Seems like some weeks are slow and other weeks are just crazy busy. This has been a crazy busy week. How things been for you?
Actually, things have been kind of quiet for me this week. So before we talk about that, I'll just kind of start here. Thanks everybody for joining in, and I always like to start off by saying before we begin the conversation that whatever we say today, the phenomenon is multifaceted. Hang on a second. For some reason, old vet can't get up here. Which means it's not all one thing. with one purpose and one agenda. And if you hear me talking about the negative alien agenda today, that doesn't mean there are not positive forces or neutral forces out there. Even within the negative alien agenda, there are warring factions. You can think of it like a cartel boss with multiple levels of underlings and gangs kind of warring amongst each other. Old vet, you might have to go out and come back. I'm having a hard time getting you in. Oh, there he is. So I just kind of think of it like that. You have the cartel boss, you got multiple levels of underlings, gangs, they're all fighting amongst themselves, and yet they come together for the common goal of, usually running dope, money, guns, humans, stuff like that. So when you hear us talking today, don't get the wrong idea that we think everything is negative, but me and Bridget came together to provide this space where we can speak freely and others can share their experiences, because a lot of what we have to say is not always well received by the community, and that's okay. And so it just becomes a choice to either be in this room or not be in this room, which is kind of how we like it. Bridget and I have had many of the same experiences, but we've also had different experiences, and we have different perspectives. We don't always agree, and that's actually a very good thing, because no one here wants to be caught up in an echo chamber without considering other ideas and perspectives. And, only coming together, sharing our stories, can we, get a further understanding of the phenomenon. I think it's also important to know that when it comes to the phenomenon, many things can be true all at the same time. And that's about it. So Bridget, did you had a rough week, or because mine was pretty quiet, if you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty quiet on the high strangeness front. Just, normal 3D life stuff got kind of busy and hectic this week. I've noticed we've all been in some spaces recently that were pretty interesting. The one with Pasoka, that was very interesting. Some of the things that she had to talk about. I was very interested in what she talked about the water sacs and the electrical signals surrounding the membrane. That seems to be where it's at. That they messed with the DNA and there was no change in the subject. They messed with the RNA. There was no change at the subject, meaning the way it developed and what its DNA was told to do. But as soon as they messed with that electrical signal, suddenly they had frogs growing two heads and all kinds of things. And I thought that was a very telling statement. We're all starting to realize that this is all electromagnetic energy, that the phenomenon itself is electrical in nature, would explain a lot of the electrical interferences that we all seem to have with devices and things not working in their presence. And I think if we step back and really look at that, that's pretty telling.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting to see.
My bad.
Go ahead, Shane.
No, I had my mic open. I said my
Sorry
bad.
about that. It's interesting to see the science finally coming around and catching up with what we've all been saying, this whole time. It gets frustrating, but it is interesting to see them coming around and kind of wrapping their science brains around, all the kind of crap that we deal with. So it's a good thing. Go ahead, Olvet.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool. Hey, I was just going to say, if you guys in the space are enjoying the space, do them a favor, retweet it, give them a follow. Like they said, there's not a lot of places you can talk about this. So, and get active in that thread. The more active that thread is with links and things you enjoy about the darker parts of this subject, the more people access it. And that's the algorithm that gets these spaces hopping. I think it's important to actually get these darker spaces hopping, because I don't think people know what's out there and what's coming. So retweet.
Thanks, Olvet. I appreciate that. Yeah, I actually heard, I heard Tom speaking today on his podcast of a few of the darker aspects. And then I also heard David, David trying to get out a little bit on that Calling All Beings show he was on the other day. I was proud of both of them. They did a good job. They're a lot more diplomatic than I am, which is what's needed in some cases, depending on what show you're going on or what podcast you're on, it's needed. And I really appreciated hearing both of them. Go ahead, UFO Shane.
Yeah. I hear a lot of this stuff, and you have too. You host good spaces. Old Vet knows. He's part of the Council of Shanes. He's been around the block even longer than I have. Hell, one of the first spaces I ever joined was with him. And all we hear a lot of the time are hypotheticals or people who've had these things happen to them. They're trying to explain them with our science. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If you can control gravity, if you watch the Encounters today on Netflix, the very first story is about Stevensville, Dublin, Texas. And when you hear about that dude that was out hunting and he looked up and the sun was blocked out, and he said, and he told James Fox this as well, when that thing took off, it should have sucked me up in the aftershock. You know what I mean? Like the atmosphere didn't affect it. And these things, whatever they are, and I do believe, like what Fringe is saying, because I'm a big follower of Stephen Mira and Barry Fitzgerald, who will be in the spaces here shortly. But I do believe that it's the same phenomenon with a different mask. And if you can control gravity, if you can fly through the atmosphere into the ocean and do whatever you want, you're no different than Zeus or Thor or Odin or any of these ancient gods we've looked at. God with a little g, God with a big G. Their technology is no different than magic. Any magic, any science so advanced is no different than magic, right? And people trying to explain this based on our physics and our understanding, man, we don't know shit. We only had these physics for 120 years, if that. I don't know. 1935 is when when it was the nuclear fission was found. So it was weaponized in 1947. So, this stuff, whatever it is, it could be walking around your house right now and you can't even perceive it. Some of you might, but you're no different than a god, or at least a demigod, right? These beings, whatever they are, they don't have any reason to be nice to you or tell you the truth or do anything for you. It all seems to be for whatever agenda that they have. And rightfully so, because they're literally the alpha predator. They have everything over us. Does our government have some of this shit in a warehouse somewhere? 100%. But that doesn't mean we understand how to use it. But they do, because it's their science that we're trying to figure out with our meager understanding of reality. And like I said, if you can control gravity, you can bend time and space, you're no different than a fucking god. And I just think that gets lost sometimes because we try to explain everything based on our knowledge and our understanding. But you have to have some type of humility and really understand that whatever the fuck this is, it takes things from us. It takes iron from our blood. It takes people who had experiences are wiped out for multiple days afterwards. So it's taking something from you, but you can't stop it. You can do your best to stop it. But I just don't know that people really understand how advanced this shit is. It's literally no different than like people telling stories about Zeus throwing lightning bolts to me. If that makes any sense. If what I said makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's been talked about before that the phenomenon will show itself in whatever is relatable to who they're trying to relate to. And back in however long ago, that was how they described these things that they didn't understand, and they didn't have the science and the physics that we have today, or at least that's what we think. We're now starting to realize there's a whole lot we thought or were told that is not the case. But I always come back to this little clip from the Twin Peaks series, and I never saw the series, but somebody put this clip in a tweet out, and it basically said that all of these phenomenon, from angels and demons to aliens and lights in the sky to miraculous miracles, it's all part of the same uncanny energetic source, and that we can never really truly wrap our heads around the entirety of it, because we're in it. You can't be within a system and be able to step out of that system and see it from a higher perspective. We don't have that capability down here.
I'm telling you, if you have not looked into Stephen Mira and Barry Fitzgerald, the same phenomenon, right? But a different mask. Fairies, angels, demons, jinn. Same shit. but
Exactly.
wearing a different mask.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think it's all part of the same source. It's all coming from the same source. And I think it manifests itself in various different ways: good and light beings, physical beings, non physical beings, just phenomena type activity, not necessarily with a being at all. I think it all is coming from the same source. And I think we're desperately trying to wrap our heads and our science and everything we can around it. But the bottom line is that that source is created and operates from outside of our reality. So with us being limited to our reality, I think it's nearly impossible for us to get that overview perspective of what exactly the entirety is. I agree.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Bridget. And to get real quick to what you said, UFO Shane, about the power of the phenomenon and the tech of the phenomenon. As many of you all know, I am in a constant battle trying to stop my own abductions. And last week, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone in the community who reached out to me with all sorts of different ideas and different things for me to try. I really appreciate it. I actually, or actually, B, you sent me the link for the Faraday quite some time ago, the Faraday material. I'm going to try to put that over my helmet, believe it or not. And then a couple other things. And there was even someone in the community who actually very likely put himself in personal jeopardy trying to help me. So I just wanted to say thank you for that to
Friends,
everyone.
have you tried iron at all?
Yeah, so I definitely have the iron all over the place, and I take iron, and I just had my blood work done, and my iron's actually fine. Um,
It doesn't. It's not a solve all by
no,
any
it's
means,
not,
but it does tend
but
to
it's
help.
been helpful. I actually noticed it when I started using the iron. It was helpful. Um,
Holly's been doing those Monroe Institute things, and when like what Carl when I had Carl the Crusher in there, he was talking about when you get to the 23rd step of that, you start getting abducted and stuff. And Holly, she woke up and she was thrown down her fucking stairs.
oh yeah,
And she went and bought iron stakes and put them around her property and everything to try to get it to stop.
yeah, it's
But once
crazy.
again, she does live in the UK, and when you're a woman, and I'm not a female by any means. I was raised by women, but your iron cycle can be very different based on your menstrual cycle and other things. And it's very weird. It's like they take from you. They take something from you. I hope you get it under control.
Yeah, I appreciate
I
that.
really, really do.
Those tapes are definitely, I try to keep people away from Gateway, but people have to figure it out for themselves. A lot of times we think this
Well,
stuff is,
I think you were there, weren't you?
what's that? I was for Carl's.
You were
Yeah.
there, weren't you, in Carl's space when he was like some of the tapes have been infiltrated by the CIA.
Oh yeah. And I've been trying to tell people
Yeah,
that, and
Carl knows his
it
shit.
was very refreshing to hear him say that, because you can't force your ideas on anybody. You can just put it out there. And I was just going to say, people think this stuff is cool, and it is cool. It's cool to develop yourself and to develop your soul and to develop your psychic abilities. But people don't understand that when you do that, you are opening yourself up to the so-called other side, or whatever it is beyond the veil that we don't normally perceive. And so you just have to
The other
know that
side.
going in. Establishment, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. And yeah, I just wanted to give a couple of quick updates. So, saw that at the White House level, they're putting together a review board. And obviously, for the other people here wanting disclosure yesterday, I get it. I'm just trying to give out some news. So supposedly there's a review board that they're putting together within 90 days, and then they said within 300 days they want to have inputs, and then from there they would provide whatever inputs from there out. Um, and I will just say, I don't know how I can necessarily say, but I'm in discussions with some folks pretty high up somewhat. And, a lot of the names we all kind of hear in both the academic and all these other different places, inputs are going up. So it's kind of good to hear about that. Also, I'll be watching the Netflix special. And in the first episode, one of the guys with the rifle who was looking up said he saw something that was like a mantis, so that was pretty cool. And then been following the individual Ashton, who's doing the MH370 updates. He's found a firsthand witness who actually saw the plane disappear, and so there's someone that you can He refers to her as KT. If you want to read up on that, that's the second thing I post up. And he has a whole YouTube video on there, which goes into really good detail on just his thoughts. And obviously, there's tons of stuff about it, but just really interesting to see. Maybe one day that'll actually, get up into the news and stuff. But just wanted to share. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Just real quick, I don't know if Paul and B actually popped up and then went out on their own, but I didn't take you guys down. If I don't know what happened there. So
Well, speaking of our government, one of the things that I am just sitting on pins and needles waiting to happen is our government is very reluctant to address abductions. We all know that. And the reason is because they have ridiculed us and tried to make us look like these crazy people for forever now. And suddenly they're having to admit, oh, well, yeah, these things are real, but we don't know what they are or where they come from. Well, that's quickly changing, and they are not going to be able to avoid the abduction topic. And so I'm very curious how they're going to address that. How are they, because we all know that these programs, these legacy programs, have been in place for a long time, and that they've known a whole lot more than they've told the public about for nearly a century now. So I don't see how they're going to reconcile the things that they've done, the people that they've discredited, the people that were thrown in prison, the people that just disappeared and were never found again, who happened to be making waves in this topic. They're going to have a whole lot to answer for. And I think that's one of the reasons that they're trying to avoid the whole abduction scenario, because they know it's going to bite them in the ass. And I'm waiting for that day. So just that little tidbit.
yeah, it was actually interesting to hear what Ross Colehart had to say about abductions this week. I was really happy to hear that, old vet.
I put a question up in the Jumbotron nest, so I'll read it off. You lady probably answer it better than me. I'd be interested in hearing a discussion on signs that a non-experiencer might actually be an experiencer, sleep paralysis, dreams, or any other sign. Thanks.
Yeah, you know what, old vet, I'll go ahead and post up in the nest also. Melinda Leslie has a pretty comprehensive list where you can just kind of go through it and count up all of the signs, and then she gives you some categories. I'll put that up there. Thank you. Paul, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I was switching devices. That's why I ended up dropping down, just FYI. You know what? I'm gonna put my hand back down because I had something very specific to say, and I lost it. So I'm sorry about that, but thanks for taking me up. I'll put my hand back up in a bit.
Yeah, Bridget, go ahead. I'm going to try to find this thing from Melinda real quick.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to answer Shane's question there about signs that you've been abducted, I think this thing is so individualized and caters to each person's belief systems, and I think yeah, there are lists that, like, generalized lists and certain things that will tell you, yeah, something's going on. But I think also in a lot of cases, it's very specific and individualized. And there's so many different types of experiences, as Fringe and I have discussed many times before. Some of these experiences are actual physical experiences where your body is taken. Other experiences are more of what we're calling an astral experience, where your soul is removed from your body and goes through these experiences. And Fringe has mentioned many times what she calls VR experiences, which really freaked me out because I guess I called them dreams, and I have them every night, and I never really looked at them that way until she started talking about that. And now I'm questioning my dreams every single night because I am a lucid dreamer every single night. I know that I'm dreaming. I know that I'm being put through a test, that I have choices to make, and I'll have the same exact dream for like a week or two, or I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. It's different with each one. And then once I reach a certain point, it's like that first part of the dream falls away, and I know that this is the second half of it because it's the same characters, it's somewhat the same situation, but I don't go through that first part that I went through 6 times or 16 times or whatever it was. and the dream would start off at that second part. And then after however long it takes to get through that whole exercise, then it's like I'll have a little break for a few days, and then all of a sudden it's like this whole new scenario presents itself. So there's so many different types of experiences. I think it can be hard for someone to distinguish, was this a dream? Did this really happen? And they talk about physical marks on your body, and I know some do have them, but a lot do not. So, or you don't notice them if you do. So I think it's very complex to be able to figure out, one, if you are having experiences, and two, what type of experiences that you're having. So yeah, there is that. And we'll go, I don't know who had their hand up first here, but we'll try Paul again since he forgot the last time, and then we'll go to Old Vet.
Oh, thank you. Looking forward to Old Vet. Yeah, well, I guess I'll just jump off of what we were just talking about with, like, what kind of experiences are we having when it comes to physical versus mental experiences? Like, what does it mean when we have physical markings, as in my case? As far as I know, and this might sound like pompous or elitist or something, but uh, uh, I think that okay, sorry. So I know a guy who's writing a book right now. His name is Daniel Rekshan, and he's collecting a compilation of people who have had various types of physical markings. And he has still said to this day he's collected about 100, and that mine is the number one most like geometrically sound and anomalous type of marking that he's ever gotten. And yet at the same time, like I don't remember anything from that night. I remember things from the night from an I think 2 nights before. I remember things from the night following, and I remember things from that surrounding period of time where I encountered gray aliens, and I actually saw. This sounds crazy, but I saw through my wall, and I saw a triangular UFO shoot a blue laser into my bedroom, and it was like it was scanning my bedroom. And I felt like there were beings in my bedroom, and I kept my eyes closed while this was happening. And this all occurred within the same week, where I received these 8 puncture wounds on my leg. And so, I go about my life and I show people pictures of this. I've shown all sorts of people, like serious people. I'm not trying to name drop here, but I've shown Leslie Kane pictures of these. I've shown all sorts of folks pictures of these and of my markings, and some people have shown me pictures of their own, and we talk about it like it's like stigmata or something. It's like, did the aliens actually do this to us, or did our mind? Or did our mind manifest it, or did they manifest it through our mind? So I just want to raise that question before I ramble on.
Yeah, that's an amazing
Well, I
question.
also
Oh, sorry, Bridget.
No, I was just going to say that he pointed out about the missing time, or him having no memory of the actual event, and that is very common as well. And Fringe, you've touched on that a lot of times people will only remember the sleep paralysis, or they'll only remember the bright light when it starts, and they have no recollection of what happened in the actual experience. That's pretty common.
Yeah, and I did want to touch on something, Paul, that you brought up. First of all, I did post up in the Nest a photograph I came across today of a gal who's got some serious markings on her back. And like you, but not nearly as prominent as yours, I had three puncture wounds lined up on my wrist. It was very small, but it actually reminded me of your photograph, Paul, because you have what, 7 or 8? You've got quite a few. And then this gal that I posted up in the Nest, she brought up exactly what you brought up, which is something I think about a lot, because it seems like I have had abductions where I know my physical body has not left the bed, yet I can return with bruising on my physical body. And it does, it just really blurs the lines, because you think if you find physical bruises on your body, it must have been physical. And it's not always the case. And I'm not saying it's never the case. This is a physical thing. These physical beings remove physical bodies and take our physical eggs and sperm and make physical hybrid beings. So there is a very physical aspect to the phenomenon, but there's also an
Right.
astral or energy body aspect as well. And they can take your energy body. In fact, Paul, we had quite an extensive conversation on UFO intros not too long ago. I re-listened to it the other day. It was really good. I am now to the point, and this is going to sound a little crazy. They were talking in the space yesterday and about consciousness and non-local consciousness. I am now to the point where I believe there's a physical abduction, there's the astral abduction, there's the virtual reality, but there are now times that I can actually tell that my astral body has not gone anywhere, yet my consciousness is in another body looking out the eyes of another body. And so for the longest time, I thought consciousness resided with the astral body. I thought when my astral body goes out, my consciousness goes out and it's all the same. And I'm now thinking it might not even be that, which is really just messing me up in the head. Hopefully that makes sense to anyone in this room. Vet
Yeah,
or
it
Paul, go
makes
ahead.
sense to
Yeah.
me. Sorry, I know old vet. You've been very patient. I just wanted to say that, like, um, it's just so confusing because we have this physical proof of ova being taken in sperm, and like I know people who've had these experiences, and I like it's what I call a paraphysical phenomenon. It's both physical and non-physical, and I don't quite know what to make of that, unless it's like the best I can think is that is the time traveler hypothesis. And I could be totally off base here, but maybe it's like they can't interact too much physically with us, otherwise they mess up the timeline. It's just a guess. I also want to say I posted a picture of my markings, but I can't seem to get it into the nest. So if anybody wants to refer me there, thanks.
There is a universal timeline war, but I'll move on from that. That's not what I was going to talk about. Anyway, so abductions do differ, and they differ for a reason. Think about it. They're trying a subterfuge. Matter of fact, I actually read a couple different places. They talk about that was literally what was in there. So Shane had mentioned Mira. I'm a huge fan of Mira because we both like Keel, right? And Keel even talks about don't believe what you see. It's a form of enchantment. You also have got Fort. He talks about the same thing. So whatever you're seeing is probably not really what's going on. And here's the kicker about all of this. So if we're to believe all the literature, that abductions, which I know is a thing, far more people are abducted than even realize it, because the game is to not alert the populace. But for some reason, some people remember. Very few get to really know what's going on. They may remember and have horrible, some interact and get to. And those are some of the people that I don't understand why they get talked to and kind of coached along, as others are just kind of almost tortured. This is all out there too. And yeah. So I hope that it's going to differ quite a bit. And so I know he asked that question earlier. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I can't tell you anything because they want to keep it hidden. I mean, I guess pay attention, like they're talking about Marx and things like that. Leslie's List, read the literature, but I can promise you it happens way more than you think. And you shouldn't rely on just having dreams or something like that, because if what I'm tweeting about, the things I'm talking about, the hybridization program, all of this, Jason, Miter Corp, government knowing that we have alien DNA in us. And I always talk about the paper talking about abductions and how frequent it is. And the percentages are based on what your alien DNA, RNA makeup is, right? So I don't even know. And you can also fast forward and kind of go into the things like these different programs. You've got Space Kids, Star Kids. You've got well, I've also read what's a Project Superman, Montauk, and then you also have Rick. I was just thinking about it today. The well, anyway, all of these programs. Oh, Bud Black, Project Preserve Destiny. All of these programs rely on some form of hybridization, enhanced human. Does that sound like X-Men? Is that not wild? And these programs they're hidden within the NSA, and I've kind of posted stuff about that as well. You know, Dan, he actually talks about that, you know, some of the different proof when who was the guy that leaked all those documents and had to split to Russia? When he leaked all those, some of those talked about the hidden programs, and those programs, the black programs, that's not the ones we're interested in. They hide these programs you guys are talking about where they know about abduction. They know who's being abducted. They hide them within these black programs with these gray programs. And the reason they do that is if anybody asks, including Congress, this guy has a dual job. No one would even know because there's still a highly classified program, but he wouldn't know the other part of the job. I also recommend everyone in here read Above Black Project Preserve Destiny by Dan Sherman. It's a really good book. And I imagine when the book by Scott Andrews comes out, there'll be some kind of a similar theme. Do you feel me? That's wild, but it's all about the human genome being changed, us being altered. And I always post this document, The One Human Problem. I think we found the solution. It talks about that. For us to keep going, we have to graduate. That's like X-Men shit, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely X-Men shit. So Chain Lube, I just say, first of all, every single thing that Paul just said, like it or not, he's an abductee, and I usually don't just throw that out there for someone, but it's not up to me to convince you. It's kind of up to you to discover that for yourself. So when people write to me privately and they tell me everything that's happening to them, I say, well, I'm going to make an educated guess and say you're an abductee, but it's not for me to decide, right? It's you and your path. And I'm not here to shove it down your throat or to make you believe you're something you're not. But there are certain signs. That exact thing that has happened to Paul, that ship has pulled up right outside of my window and sent a friggin' beam inside and literally beamed my brain from outside the window. You know, there's the craziest stuff. You're talking about sleep paralysis, dreams. If you're dreaming about beings, if you're dreaming about medical procedures, if you have cataclysmic dreams, the sleep paralysis with a being in your sleep paralysis, because not all sleep paralysis is an abduction. And if you've seen a UFO very up close, you know, if you put that big picture together, then I say it warrants further investigation, if that makes any sense. Paul, what do you got?
I'll just say real quick because we got other hands that thank you, and I agree, and I feel like when it's so hard to reckon with these things and to come to terms with the fact that something's actually happening to you. And what was I gonna say? Just sorry, you kind of put me on the spot there a little bit. I want to put my hand back up, and I'll come back.
Yeah, I apologize. I actually apologize for calling out, but you're talking about some stuff that just, you know, fits right into the box. And you know, it's something that it can be hard to wrap your mind around. People write to me all the time and just say, "Hey, oh my gosh, this is what's been happening to me since I was a kid. I thought it was crazy," you know, all this kind of stuff. And
yeah,
it's tough.
Okay, you actually helped me. You helped me remember. I just wanted to say that, like, you know, after I got these markings, and I'm not going to bore people because I've told these stories, but I started to have not just out of body experiences, but out of body experiences where like gray aliens were pulling me out of my body and speaking to me telepathically, as well as mantis beings. I had two main encounters where it was as if I was pulled out of my body semi willingly. It was like they at least one of them was I gave into it, and they spoke to me telepathically. They didn't say anything too significant. They didn't give me any predictions about the future or anything like that. They just kind of, did the typical stuff of like stay calm and did some things to me. But yeah, I guess I'm just saying like this shit is real. Like people actually experience these abductions, and they don't feel like dreams, and they escalate into other realms of uh non-ordinary states of consciousness, such as things like we call astral travel or out of body experiences and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but it's almost, I mean, you have too many signs at this point. Go ahead, hiker gal.
Hi, this is for Paul, and he was talking about the markings on people. Um, I know an experiencer, an inductee, a good friend of mine. He has a square tattoo in one of his eyeballs, in the back of his eyeball near his retina. So, and the ophthalmologist who found it said he has seen only a couple of other people with this tattoo. And strangely enough, this friend of mine was in the Navy, and the ophthalmologist also was in the Navy. And both of these people were stationed in San Diego at one point. So I just think that's very interesting. So that, so there's two aspects there. So there are internal tattoos, evidently, as well. So I just wanted to just throw that out there. Thank you.
Hiker, I just have to say, tattoo. You use the word tattoo. I can't tell you how many people have shown me markings, including mine, which I haven't shared in this thread, that literally look as if you have been tattooed by something. And the fact that that's in their eyeball, that's amazing.
Oh yeah, he was stunned, absolutely stunned. And in fact, I'm having a conversation with him right now because he was abducted last night and he's telling me about it, and I feel really bad for him, but he put up the fight of his life. Um, so we're talking about that right now. So I'm going to drop down, but I just wanted to tell you about the tattoos portion of it, which was just my mind was blown. Thanks.
I just want to add on the San Diego part. I was listening to Melinda, and she was saying that there was a mass abduction in the Hotel del Coronado back a number of years ago. So mass abductions are also interesting. I haven't heard of before, but yep.
And I think that was in my lab, if I'm not mistaken, where her and a bunch of people who went to the conference were actually taken on the same night by our own people, which is a whole different topic. See,
Is do you guys?
no,
Well,
go ahead.
I
Go
don't mean
ahead,
to
Paul.
interrupt. So you're talking about mass abduction. Does anyone remember of the name of the event or date? There's also another one involving military, a mass military abduction. When there's a witness, I gotta find the video. There's witness testimony. He talks about being witness to watching his whole platoon while they were being marched out, being taken. See if I can find that interview and put that out there. So
Oh, damn. No, Melinda's talking about, I meant our own military. It was a My Lab abduction of several civilians who were speaking at a conference down at that
Yeah,
hotel.
What
she
conference?
and two of her friends were taken, 3 total,
Yeah,
supposedly.
insane. All at the same time in the back of a truck.
This is the UFO conference or something like that?
Yes, I believe it was. Go ahead, C. Welcome to the room. I don't think we've heard from you yet.
No, thank you. Um, I'm just gonna introduce myself because yeah, I never been really adopted. I think I never been, but I don't want to speak into the room. I want to speak into me. I want to speak into my body and share what is my bodily experience. And it's not going to be talking about tattoo. It's not going to be talking about abduction. It's not. It's not going to be that. No, because I can just master what is that I am. So I just own my shit and I have no fear for the future. Not one fear. It's done. I mean, I know, and I know the person that taught me what was not gonna happen because of my participation, and I can share it. No one wants to listen to it in the US. It doesn't matter. I'm just here and now, and I myself.
All right. Well, let us know if you do want to speak on it. We're happy to listen. Parsi, go ahead.
Hey, Fringe. I think I reached out to you a few days ago. So I'm actually a childhood experiencer. I'm not sure if I've been abducted, but it's a really interesting story. My dad was stationed in Mumbai, India. So my dad was in the Navy. And we were living in this apartment, mom, myself, and my twin. And all of a sudden, one night, sitting in my room, and I'm hearing this deep humming, like it's literally vibrating through my body. And something
Oh my
telepathically told
god.
me to go outside. So I go outside, and I would I'm on the third floor of a building that has a wraparound balcony. So I don't know that I'm not the only one experiencing this sighting. So I look up, and I'm looking at this oval, kind of an American football shaped craft with lights around the edges. The lights are changing color and they're humming, so it's like a whoa 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 hum. And I shit you not that there is a yellow, looks like a yellow window that opens up, and it looks like there's a hand waving, and I thought I was going crazy. So then this lasted for about maybe about 30 seconds. I'm looking at this thing. I'm on the third floor of a building. It's probably about 3 feet up, and I'm surprised that no one else is seeing it. And it moves to my right, and I'm saying, hey, I think I can catch this on the wraparound balcony. So I run out to the wraparound balcony, and my twin brother is looking at the same thing at the same time as me. So now we're both looking at this thing, and it literally stops in midair, and we see the hand or whatever it was waving, and it goes away. So we run inside the house, and we're like, Mom, I think we saw a UFO. And my mom's like, oh, you guys are full of shit, Go in each room and draw me what you drew. And that's what the illustrations I sent to you. So we ended up drawing exactly the same thing. Now, after that experience, I was 11 when that happened. For the next maybe about a month or so, I started having a deep psychic connection with orbs, the ones that Chris Bledsoe speaks about. So I would finish dinner, and something would tell me go out on the wraparound balcony. I'd go out on the balcony, and I would see 2 3 orbs in the distance. And now here's the crazy thing: is I would walk on the balcony, and I would say, if you can hear me, walk with me. So they would actually walk with me, which was really scary. So this was when I was about 11. We ended up moving to New Zealand and then Australia. So nothing really happened. So in Australia in my 20s, this continued onwards. So I ended up having paranormal experiences. I ended up seeing the spirits of the people that we bought the house from. This was in my 20s. Nothing happened in my 30s, but now I'm actually 43. And I had a weight loss surgery. I lost 60 kilos. And I had a massive spiritual experience, like a Kundalini awakening. I've started being able to see my aura and the aura of people around me. My brother, who's really secretive, sent me pictures of a plasma craft that he saw on the Gold Coast in Australia. Days before I ended up going for a regression session, which I told you about. Now, I had no idea that there were any other races besides Greys. Now, here's the crazy thing. In my session, and I know you said that there could be negative influences channeling. I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but in my regression session, I ended up seeing a being that looks like a Grey, and the word Lyra formed before my eyes. So this being was telling me that apparently my soul origin was on Lyra. And in a few minutes, I actually physically felt my hands morphing into reptilian hands. And then I started channeling my reptilian self. This being even gave a name to itself. And I put this whole experience on a forum called Project Avalon. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it. Carrie Cassidy and Bill Ryan, they started this forum. And after that experience, I've been able to like draw diagrams. I've been drawing alien languages, alien symbols. I ended up drawing the entire face of the being that I was, because every time I close my eyes, I see this being. And the being actually mentioned that he was based on a planet called Thuban from Alpha Draconis, and his name was Rak, Rakhkhh. And when I spoke like the being, I freaked out the regression therapist, because I was saying shit that I had no idea, absolutely no idea what I was saying. And that's pretty much where my story is right now. So I reached out to James Bartley because he's an expert on reptilians and stuff. But I haven't really pushed the whole thing because I think I'm going to bring negative influences on myself. So that's why I'm here right now, is because I'm super lost. This isn't something that you can kind of speak about even with your family, because they'll all think you're crazy. I'm not sure if anyone else has experienced this over here. Feel free to reach out to me either on Twitter and let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Percy. I know it takes a lot of courage to come up and tell your story, and you found the right place, because we will all listen to you, and no one here is going to call you crazy. A couple of things. Yes, I am very cautious when it comes to the QHHT sessions, because you're literally inviting a channeling, and any being can pop in there that might not be the being that you're actually looking for. I know a lot of times it's an open channel, and then sometimes they're asking for a higher self channeling, but you're actually opening yourselves up to beings from, could be any beings, a being telling you they're from a certain star system, the being telling you that it's your reptilian self. You just have to take all of that with a grain of salt, because they are very deceptive. I actually just did a podcast with James Bartley a couple of days ago, and I'll let him know that you're trying to reach out. I'm sure he'll be happy to talk to you. He does have a lot of experience in that area.
Yeah, we've actually kind of spoken, touch base, but it's really hard for me to get some time with him, because we're both in Australia as well, and it's hard to just sit down and get this out of my system. Because in that regression session, I saw what was actually happening was I saw that as reptilians, we were consuming humans on a physical level, and that people perceive them as being evil. But I mean, how are we not evil when we are eating animals, right? Now, the story that was going on in my whole regression, and this is all on the Project Avalon forum, is that the beings found out that I was actually starting to gain a soul and empathy. So they decided to punish me and put me in a human life. And I saw this crazy stuff. I saw a mantis being. I had no idea of these beings. A mantis being, a reptilian Greys, and I'm lying on a stretcher in my reptilian body, and they're taking out my soul and putting it into a human body. And after that, I've had so many visions of what my former self looked like. Like, I've literally been possessed, and I've been drawing these images. I've been drawing the being standing on his craft. I've drawn the facial features of this being. It's nonstop. Like, it's crazy. But I have no idea if I've been abducted or not in this life. Like, I don't have any physical markings. But I always feel like there's some kind of weird presence in my house, especially after I read Chris Bledsoe's book. Just the other day, I was towards the final chapter where I was reading about the lady. Started getting dizzy, and I thought there was actually some presence in the room. So who knows if it's all connected.
Yeah, it probably is connected. And you being a twin, and then you're having this up close sighting with your twin, And then all the experiences you've just laid out. I'm not here to convince you, but I would actually be more shocked than not if you were not being abducted, unfortunately. Yeah, James would be great. You're in Australia too, it should be a little bit easier for you to hook up, because I know we have a huge time difference. And then reach out to me if you need any help or you need to talk. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I will. And anyone, feel free to reach out to me as well on Twitter. And I'm on Project Avalon Forum as well as ParsyX. You can see all my illustrations up there. And yeah, I would really appreciate just anyone reaching out to me. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. We appreciate you telling your story. Stick around, ask questions, or maybe people might have questions for you. I'm not sure who's
Sure.
next.
Thank you so much.
Paul, I don't know if you have something for Parsy, maybe.
Yeah, sure. I feel like I'm talking a tiny bit too much, but I guess I'll say to Parsy, trying to know whether you're having these abductions or not, or having these experiences. It is just really muddy, like people have all sorts of profound experiences through meditation or through sleep related encounters, which some people write off as sleep paralysis or dreams. And I think that those types of states should not be written off. I think that dreams and meditation and all of that, it should not be written off. So, yeah, I would just consider that a little bit. And when it comes to the reptilian thing, and how they could potentially treat us like we treat other animals on this planet. This is something that, unfortunately, I've had to consider myself. I think I might have talked to Fringe, about this. It doesn't make it right, and I'm trying to move towards vegetarian, or at least something close to that. But like, if we are eating life, then who's to say that life does not also eat us, and that also that might be the whole somber aspect that Louis Elizondo talks about. Like it might not literally be that like humans are being eaten and harvested for adrenochrome and blah blah blah. It could be something more subtle than that. I don't tend to go into conspiracies, but I
Yeah.
do think that we need to judge each other. Just this is the end. I think we need to judge the potential alien ethics, quote unquote, by our own human ethics.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, look, in my regression, I was shown that yeah, apparently this race does eat humans, but they don't think of it because good and evil is like a human construct, right? It's really up to us to judge other people. We judge humans for God's sake, and now we're judging people from another race, right? So I have had a ton of sleep paralysis in my 20s. It's kind of weaned off a little bit right now, I think, because I've been doing a ton of meditation just to protect my state. And I only found that after I started doing the meditation, um, so sorry, let me just go back a little bit. After the QHHT session, I used to get these crazy downloads. Like I would have a voice speaking to me and a really weird accent, and this being would say the words. It would say Draconis, and it would say remember who you are. And my wife would be like, "Oh, you're getting fucked up, like you're pardon the language." I would sit holding my head, thinking I'm going crazy, and I would be like, "Just give me a pen and a pad," and I would start writing down alien language. And then I found the same language in Mary Rodwell's book. Mary Rodwell helps a lot of abductees. And I was shocked. I was like, look at all these synchronicities. Like, I had zero idea about any other race besides Greys. And now I'm finding out through all these people that apparently humans originated on Lyra. Their arch enemies were reptilians. And I apparently have lived those lives and moved on into the human life. And what my higher self was trying to tell me was that the earth is basically like a school for us, school for these souls. right? And it's up to you what you want to do with it, whether you want to work for the betterment of humanity or if you want to work for the detriment of humanity.
Right,
Thank you. Sorry.
especially no, I just want to add, like, especially if you believe in reincarnation with animals, it's like animals are kind of like going to school, and animals get eaten by other animals and us, and so on and so forth. So, like, I understand why people are appalled by the idea of humans being somehow eaten or harvested or emotions being taken, but it almost feels kind of natural to me.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing, is that's I think what Lou is alluding to as well as being somber, is that we're going to be in for a rude kick in the nuts when most of the human race is just about, hey, I want to pay my bills, I just want to work, I want to keep the wife happy. But all of a sudden you have government officials coming on TV and saying, hey, guess what, we're not as strong as we say we are, we're not top of the food chain. How would the entire world react to that and say, oh, good, I'm not really in power and control of my life? And I think that's what they're afraid to lose, as in the government. They're afraid that people will start awakening and saying, okay, we accept that this is reality and move ahead. And I think that's what's kind of holding them back, at least in my humble opinion.
Can I say something, as Jamar?
Yeah, just a second. Real quick, Parsi, I agree with you. I think this is going to be the most frightening and somber aspect of the phenomenon when we realize we're not at the top of the food chain. And yeah, it's energetically, it could also be physically. I think we'll end up finding that out someday too, and having to wrap our minds around that as well. Yamarsak, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but we do have other hands up that have been up for quite some time, unless you have something that's very urgent.
No, they can go first.
All right, I think Panama's been waiting for quite some time. Go ahead, Panama.
Yeah, let me just get situated here where it's not so loud at the store. Hold on just a second.
All right, establishment, you want to go ahead?
No, I'm ready. I can go here. So, yeah, I think one of the reasons that a lot of gray abductees have minimal recall is because grays, of course, use a lot of anesthesia, and they're mostly doing medical procedures on people. And there's not many places to even go aboard their ships, like even if they were not to use as much anesthesia, whereas like the reptilian abductions I've had, they use almost no anesthesia. I'm not really doped up. I'm not out of it. I'm not numb. And a lot of that too is because they can handle me if it got out of control. Like that one time I talked about like 2 weeks ago where, I threw a punch at that one reptilian who joked about eating me. And the other reptilian intercepted it by grabbing my arm and left that really deep bruise on the inside of the arm. But I'll tell you, as far as eating, I don't think the ones here on this planet, especially the ones that work with the military, but even the ones that don't, in the present, in 2023, I don't think they do that, eating people as much, nearly as before. I know the ones that work in like the MyLab facilities aren't doing that, or the ones I've seen. I mean, the last time I saw a reptilian eating or drinking anything during a MyLab interrogation, it was wearing a sport jacket, a t-shirt underneath. It was drinking, it looked like a Starbucks type coffee, but it could have just been you can buy those coffee sleeves at any store, the brown paper sleeve over the coffee so you don't burn yourself. But as far as what's going back, on the home planet of draconians and everything, and thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, I don't know. I mean, I've spoken on Twitter about the only past life memory I have, which is I was this jellyfish type being who lived in a nebula. And unfortunately, our race was pretty racist against like a lot of other races because we thought we were like closer to God because we're these plasma type entities that are partially physical, but mostly energy. And it wasn't a good incarnation. I was there like 800 years. And I just we were isolationist and we didn't really trade or go anywhere, but we had the psychic ability to see things at a very far distance because our bodies were like antennas because we're like, these glowing jellyfish type beings. But that was just not it wasn't pleasant. By the end, I didn't like the whole isolationist way we lived, and I wasn't able to do anything about it. And that's the only past life I recall. And one thing I do kind of get is the fact that I have reptilian and gray genetics and human in this body. I wouldn't be able to incarnate in like a regular human body or a gray body or a reptilian body. I need like all those different genetics kind of jumbled together that allows, because I have a very high frequency and it's very sort of uneven, that I have multiple frequencies of reptilian and gray and human. The fact that I have that sort of, the interplay, that static, allows me to even be here. Otherwise, I couldn't incarnate here. So, but that's the only thing I have as far as past lives. But yeah, I think a lot of people are having gray abductions, and they're just, I understand why the grays keep the anesthesia up so high, because humans can be hard to deal with. And even if you didn't use it, there's been cases where people wake up during gray abductions and they go wandering around the ship and there's really nothing to do. And the grays are like, okay, don't touch that button, don't touch that door. It's like, I can't understand why the grays keep people. It's just easier to keep people, anesthetized the whole time. I understand for convenience why they do it. I'm not saying they should do it, but, reptilian abductions tend to be totally different in that they're much more interactive. I mean, sometimes more aggressive, but they use much less anesthesia because they just don't need to. You're not a threat to them usually. I mean, I'm more of a threat now than when my first abduction started, but especially because they modified me a bit. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to interject here based on the conversation we've been having.
Well, thank you, Panama. Hopefully you're doing better than you were at this time last week. Establishment, go ahead.
I'm burned out, and I'm sick, and I'm working a lot. I'm sick right now. I'm burned out. I'm working like 6 days a week, but I'm, I could be worse. I could be worse.
Panama, I love your background, Twin Peaks. I'm a Twin Peaks fanatic. Got a Twin Peaks tattoo. It's my only tattoo. It was my entrance in many ways into high strangeness, and I just admire your background. I had to say that.
Well, the thing about that director is he captures dreams. No other director has created shows and movies with dream sequences as realistic, with like dream logic, like that famous scene in the Fire Walk with Me movie where David Bowie walks into the FBI headquarters, but he's like out of sync with time and he's out of sync with the dimension. So the cameras are just catching him, but catching him like a few seconds ahead and a few seconds behind, and some people can see him and some people can't. And also, it just, there's another thing David Lynch did. Actually, there's two movies. There's Lost Highway and there's Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, I've seen all of them.
Yeah. There's the cowboy in Mulholland Drive. I mean, my God, that really makes me think David Lynch has had an encounter with like an Illuminati reptilian hybrid. Is if you look up the cowboy scene, anyone can go on YouTube, look up cowboy Mulholland Drive. Like if you ever run into, some reptilian hybrids, some higher level reptilian hybrids, the way they look, the way they talk. I mean, I can't believe that he hasn't run into one. The way that guy, the way he captured that.
I'm totally with you. I think that through his meditation, his TM, that he's encountered entities. And when it comes to Twin Peaks, Mark Frost, which is Twin Peaks is where you mostly encounter like interdimensional entities like Bob and Mike and Judy and so forth. I think Mark Frost is deep into what we're talking about. I think he actually tweeted today. Actually, if you go to Mark Frost's Twitter, yeah, he said something about the book that he read, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, and he said something to the effect of like, if you read close, you'll go down the rabbit hole, and it's so true. If you read that book, it just goes into everything from Roswell to aliens to ancient lore to anything you can imagine. JFK, Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, it's L. Ron Hubbard. It's bananas. I'm sorry for derailing, but
that's fine.
No, you guys are good. Establishment, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment that leads to just a couple questions. So, as you know, making my way through Brian Jacobs's The Threat, and I got to the chapter where they're talking about women um, either taking care of children, whether it's breastfeeding bottle or whatever. And my question is, during that experience, has anyone here had it to where they felt like they didn't even want to look at the child's eyes because you could feel the child potentially controlling you, and if you felt like you didn't want to breastfeed the baby or whatever, they would have an ability for you to literally paint on the children, because apparently they can absorb through the skin. That's how they eat, just like the grays. So those are my two questions.
Yeah, those are good questions. I don't know if Bridget has anything here, but yeah, I've taken care of lots and lots of children. No, I have never felt like I couldn't look into their eyes. I've never felt like any of them had any control over me. And I've never breastfed a child, although I have fed them through a very strange tube straw type of an instrument. Honestly, I don't even know what it was. Just a very light, like almost a milk colored liquid, but kind of more white and watery. Hopefully that answers your question, Bridget. I don't know if you have anything for that or if anyone else does.
No, I also have not had those experiences. The only experience I've had with the hybrid child is being shown my hybrid child, and it was conveyed to me that our part in the experiment was that we had been kept from each other, that we didn't know of each other's existence, and that there was this glass wall in between us when I was shown this child, and she was almost 10 years old. And it was conveyed to me that our part in this experiment was very important because they were trying to determine what would be the effect on both of us if that connection was withheld. So I was very intrigued when I hear of all these women talking about that they were given their hybrid child to hold and to show love to, and even had to do that with other children that weren't theirs, which is the exact opposite of the experience that I had. And what ended up happening was this hybrid child of mine, I guess, somehow used psychic abilities to draw me to Alaska 3 times. Like a beacon, I just felt like there was something there for me that I needed to go and get. I didn't know what it was, I didn't know why, but I knew that was my goal and I was going to get there one way or another. And I eventually did. And I was shown this child from behind like this hockey wall glass thing that went from my waist all the way up to the ceiling. And I knew, I could instinctually feel that nothing penetrates this glass. There's no resonance, and that this child cannot sense my presence, just as I couldn't sense hers. I didn't even notice the child until she was physically pointed out to me. And then when I saw her hair, I knew on a cellular level, the first thought that went through my mind was, hey, that looks like my hair. And then immediately my thought was, no, not like my hair. It is my hair. And I knew at that moment that this was my hybrid child. And that's when I was told that that was our part in the experiment, as to what would happen to both of us if this connection was withheld. And then I've heard since then people say that that's why these hybrid children weren't surviving, that they needed that touch, the human touch. They needed that connection with where they came from. So yeah, I find it all very fascinating, but that was my only experience with the hybrid.
Establishment, did that answer your question?
Yeah. No, thanks. I appreciate just any input on the interaction. I mean, in the book, he's trying to, obviously talks about the training of the children for emotion, and that's a requirement that at least they feel. But yeah, it seems, I guess, yeah, maybe if they don't have that, I should say, from an engineering perspective, when you're actually designing robots or whatever it is, if it's actually hard for a robot to identify a value from one thing to another. But if it were to have emotion, actually, Michio Kaku wrote this in his book Physics of the Future. Then from there, if it had emotion, then that robot would then be able to identify things easier and be able to choose and pick. So I'm just saying that from an overall perspective. So, yeah, pretty cool. Thanks.
Yeah, it's interesting. The hybrids, they're looking for that combination between the grays and the humans. And they're looking for the combination that can seed a human soul yet still be controllable, as controllable as the grays are. Because the grays don't have a lot of emotion. They're pretty flat, and they have almost a hive AI type consciousness. And so they're trying to find that what they would consider a happy medium between the two. Go ahead.
One last comment, and that is, they also said in the book is that if we, the humans, found out about their program, then they could no longer, go forward with it. So maybe you can have a comment about that later.
Yeah, my only comment on that is there is definitely a very strange, I don't even know what to call it. They are always looking for consent and permission. And you would think, well, if they just come rip you out of your bed at night and do whatever they want with us, why are they looking for consent and permission? So there has to be some type of universal law, some type of esoteric occult law of the universe that we just don't know about that makes their job easier if they have consent and permission, or perhaps there's some karmic aspect to it. I honestly don't know what it is, but it's fascinating to me because they will lie, cheat, and steal to get permission, yet they seek it in all things. And so it's very interesting. I'd love to hear from anybody else here who might have some ideas in that area. Yamarsak, go ahead.
You can just say why or Yamar. That's fun. I just wanted to make a comment about Parsi that I caught only the last end of your conversation, the last 10 or so minutes. I just saw this meeting and I joined because the subject was interesting to me. I can't verify all of what you noted, Parsi, but I can verify most of it from my knowledge, including what your higher self told you about the Earth being a school, although school is different depending on what grade you are, how many times you've been repeating the grade. On the topic of hybrids, I don't have any personal UFO experience. I do want to speak to the group that all of your experiences are extremely valuable for the continuing growth and ascension of the current humanity at this junction point. While it is extremely difficult, most of your lives do not fit the normal template of the civilization. It is part of what you agree to, and even if you didn't agree to it, you just got to make do with the best that you have, and help will be provided from various sources. And my personal perspective comes more from a spiritual enlightenment seeking perspective, consciousness elevation, parts of the law of one I've read as well. To address Fringe's concerns about the hybrids, I guess you've already touched upon most of the elements. It's a combination of cosmic law, karma. They also have a loophole. Normally, alien species are not allowed to interfere with the human civilization, but they can do so if they agree to volunteer one of their own souls to incarnate here. And if the individual soul agrees and it is beneficial for the soul and the species at large to integrate that soul into the Earth host matrix. Essentially, the host matrix is what you want to call the school, but it is drawing from souls from everywhere in the multiverse at the same time. So it's not just native humans here, it's a number of other people here, entities, ETs, aliens, call them what you wish. And the Greys, whatever you may wish to call them, they need something from humanity, the genetic spark or the divine spark that they lost, but they cannot get it via the invasion because they don't have the military power, and they're kind of dying out already. So they need the genetics, and to do that they get the hybridization. That's how they think they will get the genetics, because humanity can reproduce because souls wish to reproduce here, but for them their souls are not reproducing and they don't know why. So they are trying to integrate with humanity, but they have to adhere to certain rules and conventions. Given their weak state, if they violate too many karmic laws, they don't want to put their entire species into even more debt than they already have, which is why they obey the Draconians, because the Draconians are more powerful. It's like for them, due to their mistakes, it's become kind of dire for them as well. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah, all excellent points. Thank you very much for contributing that. I appreciate it. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was Yamarsa, correct?
Yes, Mariah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, just give you a follow. I feel like I just got like a direct download of what's going on because I'm also very not convinced, but interested in the concepts that we hear time and again through the Law of One and through other narratives and channel texts that there are these beings out there, especially the Greys, but also others who have, through some means or another, lost their ability to reproduce. They're using humanity as a type of farm in order to diversify their genetic stock and continue evolving and existing. It's not too different from movies like it's a little bit like Children of Men, I guess, a tiny bit, but it's more like I don't know. I guess like Childhood's End would probably be the best analog that I could think of it. Although that's not a movie. That's by Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001. But my point is that it's just it's a really fascinating and compelling concept, and we can kind of see ourselves going in that direction. Like, let's say that the Earth eventually, slowly but surely, over the next 100 years, let's say, just to make up a number, becomes increasingly inhospitable, and it becomes increasingly maybe undesirable to have children or more difficult to have children. Perhaps we will enter into the depopulation issues that are going to be devastating the pretty much all third world countries over the next few decades from statistics that I've read. If all of these things start to happen all at once, then maybe we will eventually enter a stage. I don't know when it'll occur, but maybe we will enter a stage where we have a combination of losing our propensity for sexual reproduction, as well as our ability to live on this planet, because we've messed it up so much. And I'm not trying to be a doomer here, because I'm not. I'm optimistic. I hope that none of what I said comes to pass. I truly hope that none of this is true. But it's just something that I consider, I suppose. And so I'm gonna say one more thing, and then I'm gonna take it in for the night. And I guess my encounters with hybrid alien children from a male perspective have been pretty similar to, I forget exactly who said this, but it was as if they did not know me. In fact, that's exactly what they said. And I sometimes leave out this part when I tell my story, because like it doesn't make sense. But so on New Year's Eve of 2 years ago now, or it'll be 2 years this New Year's Eve, I had my first alien hybrid experience, and prior to that, I had like a weird sexual alien experience that I kind of wrote off. Lo and behold, a couple years later, here we go. I've got some kind of hybrid child or something. So, I had this experience where, again, it was like a blue light was shining into my room. My whole room was lit up in a blue light, and I was only partially paralyzed, not really, and I felt a small, like, toddler, sized being crawl onto my bed, touching my body all over, touching my face especially, and then it kind of stopped. I had my eyes closed the entire time, and then it kind of stopped and just like sat on my bed. And when it stopped, I finally peeked my eyes open, and I looked at it, and it was your typical alien hybrid child. It had dark eyes, but not like your typical gray alien. Didn't appear to have any didn't appear to have any clothes on, but I wasn't sure. It appeared male, again unsure. And it said to me, this is the part that I sometimes leave out. It said, "We don't know you. We don't know you. We are aliens. We don't know you." It sounds absurd, but it literally said, "We are aliens. We don't know you." And then it said, "We will be back in about 3 weeks." And so here I am waiting 3 weeks. And I think it was 3.5 weeks later, because it said about 3.5 weeks later, I had this dream vision, out of body experience thing, where there were these two blonde, your typical blonde Nordics, one male, one female, that were laughing at me, saying, "You think we're aliens? We're not aliens. You think we're aliens? We're not aliens." And they were laughing at me. So that's the end of my story. It seems kind of contradictory. I don't know if the Nordic types, the blondes, were trying to imply that they were, more closely related to us than your typical alien, or or if the child was what was going on with that. But I'll end by saying that 1 year later, I encountered the child again. And this time it had grown hair, and it had grown blonde hair, and its eyes were bright blue. And it was once again crawling on my bed and touching me. So that's my experience as a man.
Wow, Paul, thank you for that. We usually, a lot of times we only hear from females, so I really appreciate hearing that. I have a couple of questions. Did you have a connection, like you were sure this was your child, or not? And then are you sure it was a child and not just a smaller type being?
Oh, yeah, no, great question. Before I answer that, I meant to mention, I know I've met some women who've been presented with hybrid children who have no connection with them whatsoever. So I just wanted to say that. I was searching for their names, but I couldn't find them. I just wanted to say that. On my part, I didn't really feel a connection, honestly. It felt like it was being presented to me like this was mine, but I didn't feel anything. And again, it said, "We are aliens. We don't know you." So perhaps it was just that, it had spent years elsewhere and it didn't know me. Maybe, I don't know, but I didn't feel a particular connection. And was there another question?
No, that was it. Just wondering if you knew that it was definitely a child, because some of the beings I see, are very small and they can look like children, but they're not children, and it can be
Can
confusing. Go ahead.
I also say,
No, this one
Paul?
looked exactly like. In fact, I found images online that looked almost exactly like it. And considering the fact that I've seen gray aliens that are your stereotypical grays of all types, both tall and short, this was your typical hybrid child.
Have you ever read the Wonders in the Sky by Rick? Who wrote that? I just had it in my freaking head. Anyway, Jacob Jacobson,
Jacques Vallée?
1700s. Yes, it is. It was on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, the Jacob Jacobson case.
Okay.
In there, you should read that. And if you can't find it there's a YouTube video on it. Jacob Jacobson. It's also very, very similar to I don't know if you've seen the movie Fire in the Sky or freaking Gosh, I forget his name too. I met him like 5 freaking times. Sorry, but their abductions
That's
both have a
Travis
sexual.
Walton.
Thank you. I listened to him play guitar like 5 times. My brain's going 1,000 miles an hour. So Travis Walton and Jacob Jacobson case seem like two different things until in Jacob Jacobson case, because they know the time frame, he actually speaks instead of grays and tall, he talks about humans and dwarfs, right? And he talks about everything that Travis Walton talks about, except you just take the different time frame. And he's discussing a lot of the things you're talking about, the sexual aspect, how basically the men can't say no. Like once they once they start the process, it's a whole science thing. And you should check it out, Jacob Jacobson case. And then like I said, it kind of matches with the whole fire in the sky. So
I just wrote it down, Jacob Jacobson. Thank you so much. I know fire in the sky, but thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing with us tonight, Paul. I appreciate it. I haven't heard some of that stuff, and I really appreciate you sharing all that with us. It's always interesting to hear from that perspective too, because we have different experiences. I think men and women frequently have different experiences. Who do we have? Kent, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. It. I think we've all touched on the subject before. The experiences seem so unique to each person that it's why I theorize that it's the conduit. You know, I say it's the imagination, the mind's eye, but it seems to be the way we, whether it's conscious or whether it's subconscious at night or whether it's through an astral experience, it seems to be that it's so unique to the person who's experiencing it. Whereas you do have the mass sightings where, you know, many people see the same thing. That's another thing altogether. But on the broader context of the phenomenon, it just seems so. And the Loki, the trickster part, the absolute ludicrousy of some of the events that take place seem to me to also indicate that there's something sort of personal about it. It's something about the personal experience that must be so endemic, so important to what this means overall. Just my opinion, anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kent. I mean, it can be very personal. And a lot of times they're just pulling images and things out of our heads and actually making it personal for us, or if you want to call it that. Bridget, I actually wanted to talk about DNA. We kind of touched on this last week, and you mentioned that you had some Native American in you, and I was actually very curious, maybe, to hear from anyone in the room, really. Because no matter what we think about the phenomenon, the negative alien agenda is a physical thing with physical beings looking for physical bloodlines and physical genetics. That is what they're interested in. There might be an aspect of interest in the soul as well, but either way, the soul has to match the genetics. So we're still right back down to bloodlines and genetics. And I found out just a couple weeks ago that I have Basque in me, which is, I think, very interesting. And then the Irish, and then there's also the Native American aspect. And I think a lot of us end up finding out as abductees that we have a Native American. Have you figured any of that out, Bridget?
I have not, but all of the journalists and researchers that I've worked with have all been very interested in my genetics and very interested in my Native American heritage. There seems to definitely be something to it. And then something was said about a merging of an old and a new. And my ancestry is Welsh or English, and then Cherokee Indian, which would be a representative of the old and the new. And so there definitely is something to it, but I certainly don't know the answer.
Yeah, I'd be interested in if anybody here might have any ideas about that. Go ahead, establishment.
Oh, yeah, I'm watching. I'm on the second episode of this Encounters, and the Zimbabwe folks are talking about the coming technology. I mean, this is happened in the 90s, so you already have the nukes happening. And they're saying that the coming technology is not going to be good for the human race. And I'm trying to draw a parallel from that to, I mean, yes, we're on social media, but like all the iPhones and everything else that we have, the screen generation is growing up, and we have all these teachers now saying, our kids can't barely process a sentence. They can't read anything. And I'm just curious if anyone, with their experiences maybe draws a connection with maybe the human race. Obviously there'll be less kids, everyone's going to be connected to screens, and maybe they want to drop the hybrids here because humans can't even freaking talk to each other in the future. Just some thoughts.
Well, I think that humans of the future are going to be more and more like the Greys, and I think we have to consider at least one or more of the species of Greys could actually be us in the future, coming back to try to mess with our current timeline and maybe even timelines from the past, to try to avoid whatever it is that's going on with them. I mean, we have the whole AI coming up, we got the transhumanism going on, and we have in the My Labs, we're actually creating these beings or a facsimile of these beings. So I think we're becoming more like them, and they're trying to become more like us. So I can totally see a time in the future where we are, very much more like them than we are like us. And I mean, I don't see that as a good thing, but maybe some people do. Yamar, go ahead.
Well, I definitely don't think they're gonna have an easy time of creating the transhumanism given the current status of humanity. If they have successfully created a World War III back in the 1990s. They would have been able to do all these things by bringing the world down to a fear level. But now um, you have government disclosure, but you also have the disclosure that's coming from the humans and the ET ambassadors right in this chat even. And so I don't, from the sources and the knowledge I know, they can no longer stop it. They can only hijack it by giving their transhuman timeline, which only take part of the species, but not all of it. As for your genetics, I've heard that special genetic codes hold certain keys that the ETs find important because the keys give access to certain functions on this matrix Earth. The Basque, I believe, came from Spain somewhere. They seem to be related to the Cathars back when the Vatican slaughtered a lot of them. They had some kind of genetic key that the negative forces wanted to take over or hybridize. The Native Americans seem to be related to the Hebrews, the red-haired giants, and the pre-Tower of Babylon Atlantis people, what they called those stone heads back in South America. I think there was an entire Atlantean colony covering the entire North and South America after the fall of Atlantis from some kind of disaster. That's all I could think of.
Wow, interesting. So are you saying the Native American bloodline traces back more onto the Noah side or the Cain side?
Some of the ancient records from the Book of Mormon and other ET channeling sources seem to suggest that the Native Americans are Hebrew DNA, meaning they came from before the Babylonian captivity, before the bloodlines of the Hebrew people became fragmented and full of deception and all the other issues that we have to deal with. Before that, a remnant went to the North Americas. And even before, then they found like ancient records in the North Americas, like tombs of giants and other stuff that spoke of another civilization. And they had those records as well. Yeah, that's about it.
Interesting. Thank you very much. I'm not sure. Kent, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the theories that Brian Johnson mentions is directed panspermia. It's one of the interesting aspects of this that the planet may have been seeded by several different species, and that they may have chosen locations on the planet that best suited their species. maybe the the Nordics took the north in the near the North Pole, and it's just an idea. But one of the things I find fascinating is, even if you look at evolution, if you look at the explanations that science tries to use, it doesn't really explain the diversity of even the human species, let alone the billions of other species that are here, and the interdependency. Like, nothing on the planet can survive on its own without interacting with other life forms. Nothing. So I find that another fascinating aspect as well, that we talk about evolution as if it's some sort of answer that things would just spontaneously spring into life and become us. And yet all the logic of what we see in nature every day is that we can't survive without each other and all the other life forms around us. I think that's another aspect of what they're trying to teach us when we get messages and visitations and even the wacky stuff. It to me, it's about giving us lessons that we can either choose to learn from or ignore.